This episode contains mature content and includes discussion of intimate partner violence. Viewer discretion is advised.
If you've ever been through something unthinkable, if you've ever been told not to share your story, to suck it up, buttercup, or thought, no one will believe me anyway, if you're still here fighting to figure out what comes next, then you have a story the world needs to hear, and we want to be the ones to help you share it. My name is Sam,
And my name is Joe.
and we are Project Tell Your Story. And we are here today for a second time, so we have a return guest with our favorite Heidi. Heidi, yeah. Heidi is a nail tech. She is a hairdresser, and she is a healer, and she is a badass lioness of a mother. So, listeners, if you've heard Heidi's previous episode, then you already know we're going to have a very good time talking to her today. How are you, Heidi?
I'm good. Things are good. I always like that.
Good. We love when things are good.
Don't we though? Yeah.
Yeah. Especially after the story that we're going to talk about today. So I'm glad that things are good compared to how they used to be. So,
yes. True. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So in our last interview, you were in your little Reiki room and we kind of talked about how you spend a lot of time with your feet and moving water and grounding with the earth. So our icebreaker question that we have for you today is, what is the witchiest thing that you have done this week?
It's a bad week.
Or I guess just recently. It doesn't have to be this week.
Or like cast a spell on someone.
So I actually I have a very dear, sweet person in my life who's going through a pretty troubled situation. She's getting a divorce. And I did recommend that she take her wife's name and put it in a bottle and put water on it and put it in the fridge. In the freezer, actually. And it freezes that energy. It's very symbolic of just freezing that portion out for a minute and holding it in its space so that you can live the rest of your life around it. Which does sound kind of witchy and spelly. And I guess it kind of is, but it's more of a symbolic, and everything I do comes from my Christian base, right? So it's a symbolic God, watch me do this, watch me put this in the freezer and help me keep it where it belongs. And that physical act of like putting it there and saying, this doesn't need to be in every portion of my life. This has its place and this is its place right now. That's the witchiest thing I've done this week.
It's awesome. I love that. I love spells and and all of that. I'm like, I curse people, so
I'm like, I try not to curse people anymore, but I am a rage driver. Like, I'll be driving and just swearing, and some guy almost rear-ended I got in an accident since I talked to you ladies last. I was T-boned, and it totaled my pickup. And it was super stupid emotional for me because it was the first thing I ever bought that was mine that I wanted for me. So I've had other vehicles I liked, but like I needed a Tahoe because of the kids, and always somebody was in my ear telling me what to do, or there was a reason I had to do. And this time we went looking for a car for my daughter, and I stood next to this truck and just loved it for a minute. And my husband said, baby, if that's what you want, let's just go get the other one and trade it. I mean, and he never said a word. He didn't test drive it. He didn't, nothing. I test drove it. He signed the paperwork because I'm self-employed. My signature's worth nothing, and he has a real job. And so he signed the paperwork. He never said a word. I wanted new rims. He bought new rims. I wanted purple seat covers. He bought new seat covers. Like, there was nothing in that truck that he ever even, it was my truck. And so And I paid the payment, which was a big deal to me. I paid the payment on my own. And so um I was emotionally stunted by this truck accident I was in a few months ago.
Yeah.
But so the other day I'm driving down the street and somebody's like riding the butt of my brand new truck, which is it's actually nicer than my old truck, but it's more expensive and I can't do it on my own. There's a whole bunch of emotional shit to it. But anyway, I love the truck. It's a brand new, beautiful. My niece calls it sexy. She said, I never understood sexy truck before. I understand it now. So I love it. And this guy is
Sexy
riding my ass.
sassy.
I thought he was going to hit me. And I'm like,
Ugh.
I'm
Yeah.
screaming. And my daughter's laughing hysterically. She was on the phone. Like, Mom, is there somebody riding your butt? I'm like, yes. So anyway, I do rage drive, but I don't like run people over. I just yell in my car. Other than that, I keep the rage pretty low unless there's a necessity.
Unless there's a necessity.
And we don't cross
Yeah.
that very often. I'm getting too old for that, but once in a while.
But when we
Yeah.
do. Yeah, no, I love that you said the freezer. So I call it a freezer spell. I do that too, and I've been doing that a lot recently. Like I have, I have quite a few little tubes of water in my fridge with people's names on them, or freezer with people's names on them.
That's
And
okay.
yeah, and it's not like you're not like wishing them harm. You're just trying to be like freeze their negative energy and keep it away from my
This is
circle
my
right now.
bubble, and that is
Yep.
yours.
And that is yours. You belong in my freezer. Yep. So I love that you're like, yeah, she's going through divorce. Put her wife's name in the freezer. I was like, I can attest that shit
It is,
works.
and it's more mental than anything, right? Like
Mhm.
we all know that we're not wishing they fall in an iceberg somewhere. We're just wishing that they had their space and you had yours. And so
Yeah. Yeah,
putting things where it belongs.
it's all about intention, right?
Mhm.
Like
Absolutely.
I think we talked last episode too with you about saging. So I
Oh, yeah.
sage my house, and I was just telling someone the other day, they were like, they were really confused. They're like, well, what does sage do? And I was trying to explain like the properties of sage, and like, and then you can't just sage it, you have to have an intention. And I said, look, an act without a belief is just a burning bush. I'm like, you also have to
You have
believe that
to have
something's
that.
going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like you said,
And
the spell, or the freezer. I call it a freezer spell. It's not. I mean,
it,
not we're not
it kind of
enchanting.
is, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I be real careful. Like the space that I live in, the town that I live in, you have to be a little careful with your wording.
Yep.
People lose it pretty quick. And so, yeah, I miss like in Wyoming, I could say it and they'd be like, whatever, do your thing. But in Utah, it's a little different. They're a little more.
Yeah. They're a little like burn the witch.
Yeah, they're a little like burn me downtown. And so, yeah, so I'm kind of careful. But I even like in the full moon, I make saging water, which you take your sage and put it in the full moon, and if you've ever made iced tea, you leave it out to steep in the sun. If you make sun tea, you do the same thing with saging water and a little lavender and a little put some oils in there that mean a few things. So and you do that with this great intention, and then I put in bottles, and sometimes it's not appropriate to burn sage at the salon
Yeah, then it smells like
depending
a
on.
campfire.
Well, and sometimes I come out of my room and one of the customers is like, "Is something on fire?" And it's so funny. The women I work with are like, "Oh, Heidi's here."
Heidi's here. She burns things.
Oh, Heidi must be in the back. I mean, oh, is the building smell like it's on fire? Heidi must be here. But, and they're very kind and wonderful about it. And when people question, they go, she keeps it very clear in here. She keeps our energy very nice in here. And so we let her do whatever she wants. And so sometimes the spray is better for that area, because it just smells nice. It smells like a nice room freshener, and little lavender, little sage, little rosemary.
We
And
love
you
that.
cook it in the sun and put it in bottles and spray it, and it's a beautiful smell. And then of course you do it with that intention that it cleanses the crap out of the air and keeps that space nice and loving and wonderful, and there it is. And then you have a saging
Ooh.
spray, and it smells
That's
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
If you come to town, let me know because I've got extra bottles. Love for you, lady.
Okay.
Look, We will be.
Look, we'll
I
figure
said,
it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
don't make promises you don't
Yeah.
intend to
Hey,
keep.
No,
Heidi.
I'll keep them up. My daughter was here last weekend, and we play raging dominoes for fun. We're old people, but I make my kids play with me, and we have a good time. But they're kept in the buffet. And my daughter got in there, and she's like, "Is this a bottle of saging spray?" It was like a quart jar, and I'm like, "Yeah, it's from the last full moon. It's blah 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 properties of the moon, you know." And then I did the things, and she's like, "Can I take it?" I'm like, "Yeah, you have to." I'm like, "I don't care. Take it." So,
And he said, I'm just going to make more.
I'm just gonna make more. I make 2 gallons of it every full moon, so
Sheesh.
love it.
I need to get my life in order. That's the kind of woman I want to be. I
My crystals are
do
never
little
charged,
things.
but I never remember to take my crystals out in the sun, so I'm like laying them against selenite all the time so that the selenite will recharge them. I'm like, I'm a bad crystal mom, but I do really good at moon water.
I just have selenite everywhere in my house because I'm like, eventually, if I put enough selenite, it'll charge everything. Because
Yeah, I
I
have
also don't
selenite
charge my
at
crystals.
the entrances to my doors so that people just leave their
Hmm.
shit on the outside.
Yep, I do that too.
Ooh. Ah,
Hmm.
you give me so many good ideas. All right.
I know. There you go. That's all my witchy advice for this week.
There we go. Witchy advice.
Witchy
Look, Sam needed some witchy advice, so that's really why we brought you back on.
Great. No, I think that's great.
I'm like, I guess you can talk to us, but like, can you please help me? Tell me what
This
else
year
to do.
when I did my ceremonial spring, put my feet in the water, it's been hard to find moving water here because it's so dry. But I found some, and well, my husband found it for me, and he was like, "Baby, there's this great place. I'll take you." And he took me up there. He puts up with all of my crazy shit, and so he took me up there. And while I was in the water, there was actually a butterfly that came and sat with us that very much felt from the other side and
Aw.
offer, and she just sat with us. She, butterflies don't just sit 10 inches from you and look at you and bat their wings and stare at you and have that time. And it really wasn't a message for me. It was for my husband. It was from the other side for my husband. It felt very close to him. And yeah. And then we went to walk away, and he found he collects like arrowheads and Indian, artifacts. And he found like a spear, a big, long, like right out in the open that 900 people should have seen before him. And so you kind of know that it's a cool thing when the energy comes together, when
Yeah.
heaven comes to, and they're like, yeah, here it is. And thank you for, putting your feet in the water and knowing that God gave you this moment to be clean. And as a reward, or felt like a reward. And my husband got this lovely message. And I'm sure because he's so supportive of my crazy, like it's crazy to have your wife go, let's get in the side by side and find some moving water in a drought where there is none.
Where there is none, because I need some inspiration.
Yeah,
Yes.
because I need to put my feet in moving water, and I don't have plane ticket money for the ocean, so let's go. So anyway, those moments are important.
Yeah. Yeah,
Very.
that's very beautiful. That's awesome.
There you go. That's all that I am. See, it doesn't sound witchy when I start talking. It just is witchy. That's all.
Hey, don't be worried about it being witchy. I love being witchy. I'm not as witchy as I would like to be, but we're all witches here.
Yeah. Look, and you can be a Christian witch. Like you can be like,
I am,
look,
and I
believe.
absolutely am.
Yeah.
I've been. People have said to me, "How do you claim to be Christian and then do this?" And I'm like, I don't use anything. I put my feet in the water the Lord gave us to clean my soul,
Right?
which every single Christian does at baptism. Just saying, and I don't like. There's a crossover there for me, and they're like, "But the oils and the herbs," and I'm like, "Have you read the book?" Because they brought
Yeah.
the baby mirth and frankincense.
Yes.
And when he died, what did they bring the Lord? Oh, that's right, herbs and oils, and so for me, I'm like, it's all in the book. It's all in the book, and even like my Reiki, it talks about in the Bible. It talks about a great energy of healing. It talks about that, and that is what Reiki is: that love, pure love energy from God, and giving it to other people, and let it being a vessel so that God can give it to other people.
Yes.
That's it. So yes, I'm a Christian witch.
I love that.
We're all Christian witches here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when you reached out to us, we could spend the whole time talking about Christian witches, but
I know I
we'll
could keep talking.
actually talk about what you wanted to talk about today. You said you wanted to talk about a domestic violence situation or multiple situations, from what I'm
Yeah,
understanding.
I've had some. I have had not the great. I shouldn't say luck. I did not have great taste. Psychiatrist once told me my picker was broken.
Yeah, one of my friends just said that to me the other day. She was like, I think my picker is broken. And I was like, I love that.
I had heard it before, but when a shrink says it to you, you go,
You're like, ooh, it's really broken.
"That in the book. Show me in the book."
That is a technical term. We are now telling you a medical term. Your picker is broken.
Your picker is busted. Yeah.
Picker for the pecker.
So, and you can like, I think that you can analyze that in a lot of ways, right? So we talked last time I was here about the sexual abuse I went through as a child. And I think that that led me to a situation where I was accepting physical abuse. Um, I think that does something to you that makes you swing one way or the other in a lot of ways. So it makes you want a relationship that's loving, kind, compassionate, so bad you'll put up with anything. And you become that sweet, soft person. Or it turns you into vicious hell so that you put up this vicious wall so that anybody who could break through it must love you enough to be gentle with you. I've been both of those people. And so I think it stems from like childhood trauma that wasn't part of that and childhood. I mean, the reality is trauma happens in our life, whether it's um produced by someone else or just what happens in our life, right? My dad died of colon cancer. He was 29 years old. I was 4. Um that is not anything anybody had control over. There was a the Lord took him when he needed him, and you have to come to terms with that somehow. Um that being said, it still left me with trauma. And my mom remarried, and she married a saint, a saint. He is an angel. And they were married when I was 8. He started dating her when I was 7, I think maybe 6.5. He's been in my life for a very long time. And he is my dad. And he has treated me like my dad. And he is a saint. He is a good man. He doesn't yell. He doesn't, he's a good man. And so I think that there's this level of trauma that you come with things that are out of control. So I don't want to make it sound like I had this horrible childhood. I did not. I had traumatic things happen in my childhood that then spilled into my adulthood. And some of it was other people's control and some of it was not. So I think it starts where my dad passed, and that gave people the opportunity to sexually abuse me, which we talked about. And then from there, things just added on. So um, I was very young when I met my first husband, and I actually dated his best friend when I was like 14, which I think 14 is too young to date. It was a decision my mom made. She probably was making it on purpose against the church here because 16 is the rule. And she wasn't going to follow any rules that were provided by a church that had thrown her out. So I think she made new rules. So her rule was as soon as you were in high school, you could date. So I was allowed to have boyfriends and whatever in junior high. And so I dated this guy, and he had a best friend. And when the first guy and I split up, me and the best friend got together, and I'd known him for a lot of years, and I thought things were fine. And they weren't. They just weren't. I dated him for 2.5 years. I lived with him for 9 months before we got married, and I knew better than to marry him when I married him, but I had openly lived with him while I was in high school. I was 17 when he moved in with me. which sometimes I look back on and go, holy shit. Like, I, but I put my parents in this terrible position, right? I was headstrong. I was likely to fist fight in school, um, often, if I went to school, rare. um, and so I was kind of an asshole kid. And so what were they going to do? Tell me no? He can't live here. And so they didn't tell me no. And he had his own room, but that doesn't matter, right? Like, we were living, both of us were in the basement, doesn't matter. So I knew openly, I had openly engaged in sexual premarital sex with this man. And so I had to marry him because that's what you do.
Right.
So by the time it came time for the wedding, I knew I didn't want to marry him, but it wasn't because he was abusive, it was because I didn't like him anymore. Living with him, it made me be like, not real sure I like you. But now I'd made the commitment and I'd lived with him and the plans were made and I wasn't really sure how to get out of it. And part of it was his mother absolutely hated me and she did not hide that. And she would say things about my family was too secure financially, which we did not. My family was not rolling in money. My dad had had the same job for many years and we were comfortable. And they were not at the time. They worried about the next house payment. And so she had repeatedly said I was just out of his league and he would never be able to satisfy me financially. And I was too spoiled and the list was 9 miles long.
His mom said this? That's kind of a backhand to her son.
Isn't it? Which then you don't wonder why he was such an ass, right? And so when you, and that's where it starts, right? So we were engaged all that time. We lived together all that time. We got married in September. He had never laid a hand on me or raised his voice to me. In October, I had an argument with his mother. And I had left her house and drove straight home immediately to confess. In the meantime, he had called her and told him, I don't know what, her side, which I don't know that she lied. People can be in the exact same situation and look at it from two different sides. And it sounds like a lie to you because that's not what you saw, but that's how they felt. That's what they saw. So I won't say she lied to him. I will say she told her side of the story and I was not allowed to tell mine. And so that was the first time he hit me. Wow. And he'd never raised his voice to me. I came home. I went into our bedroom. We were living with my parents. We were living in the basement of my parents' home. I came home. I went into our bedroom. I said, you cannot believe what happened today. He said, sit down. And I sat down next to him and I said, I went to your mom's. And he said, I know. I spoke to my mom. And I said, are you even going to let me tell you what happened? And he doubled up his fist and just slammed it into my thigh. And he's a pretty big guy. And people had teased him for years. They called him Magilla the gorilla at work because his strength is bigger than you would think. Like people were like 2 and 3 men were just lifting stuff and he would just grab it and hug it and move it. And I can remember the first time I wanted the house rearranged and I'm like, hey, I want to rearrange the house. Will you help me with the couch? And he just picked it up. Like, where do you want? So his strength was so, he didn't look like that, but that's something my son inherited. That strength, that unknowing strength. And so he doubled up his fist and he punched me in the leg. And I was a tough kid. I had fist fought a lot. I was trouble in school. And they watched me in school for being trouble because I was. But I was stunned, to say the very least. And so I just said, that can't happen again. That never happens again. And he said, okay. And I thought that would be the end of it. And somewhere in that time period, we were in bed and kissing, and I was like, I really don't feel like it. Um, and he said, no, that's not an answer you're allowed to give anymore, and just did. Um, and I didn't even know how to wrap my head around that. The rape word is not something you use. Like, it was, in his mind, it was his to take. He never called me his property, never, but it was an agreement I evidently made when I married him to never say no, um, for that. Um, and so here I was, maybe 45 days into a marriage. I was 18 years old. I turned 18 in July and got married in September. Um, and dumbfounded. I, first of all, had been pretty tough. People knew I was tough. People didn't mess with me a whole lot. And so I was dumbfounded that somebody had the balls, honestly, to hit me. So I was very confused by what had taken place in both of those instances. And then early December, I again had a disagreement with his mother. And I didn't like yell, scream, holler, slap his mother. I said things like, this is our plan for Christmas. And she would say, that's not an option. And I would say, no, it's an option. Or, I think the first argument was over a cousin's birthday party. We hadn't been invited to a cousin's birthday party, and so I dropped the gift. We were expected to bring a gift, just I'll provide a gift and not come to the party. And I had dropped the gift off and said, I said, I think it's really shitty that you don't like me, so you don't invite him to birthday parties, but here's your fucking gift. You guys have a great time. I mean, I'm sure I wasn't pleasant. Uh, um, I lacked that control at that time, but I didn't go in screaming. I just said, I think you guys are shitty. I think this was a shitty thing to do. And I was defending him, which is the worst part, right? And that got the first hit. And then it was probably between Thanksgiving and Christmas. She and I always had some kind of ruckus between Thanksgiving and Christmas about what right I had to make plans for my husband and I, or my family, for holidays. And I came home, and this time when he hit me in the chest. Always where it could be covered by clothes, for the most part. There, at the end, not so much. But anyway, he hit me, and it took the air out of me, and I fell down. And I was on the floor looking under our bed and saw a suitcase and pulled it out and started putting his clothes in it. And I said, this is never happening again. And he said, okay. And then a week later, it happened again. And at that point, I decided I was going to go to beauty school. I have some family in Salt Lake. I knew I would have the support I needed. My sister was living in Salt Lake at the time, my oldest sister, and I got along well with her. And at the time, and her husband they had a home big enough to invite me in and let me stay with them. And I was going to go to beauty school and go to work, possibly for my uncle, who owned a company and was willing to help me with that. And I was going to go to beauty school, and it was going to be done. And I got in my car and drove away. But I didn't tell my parents what had happened. And I, partially out of fear of what they would do, but mostly because my mother truly believes that women that get hit bring it on themselves in some manner. And that's probably the hardest part of discussing this for me, because my mom has Alzheimer's now. But her belief system about why men hit women is very different than mine. And I didn't tell her he hit me, but we were living in their home. So when I left, I told him to leave. I said, you need to take your things and go. I'm moving in with my sister in Salt Lake. I'm done with this. Um, I didn't tell my parents why I went. I just said I was going to go look at schools. And so I went to Salt Lake, and on the weekend, she brought him to Salt Lake to pick me up. You've made a commitment and you're going to stay.
Your mom brought him?
And I didn't tell her because I had made a commitment to stay. And part of me wanted to prove the world wrong. Like there'd been so much bullshit from his family about us getting married that villainized me as being spoiled. That I didn't want to look spoiled. And I didn't want that to be what people had to say. And by January, I was pregnant with my first baby, which I miscarried. And when I miscarried, his mother said, "You miscarried because God knows you'll be a shitty mother."
Thank God.
So there was a lot of verbal, emotional abuse from his mom. Yeah, that's probably the worst thing. Over the years, there were some things that were said, and she's dead now. So people get real upset. Like, how can you talk about her? Like, these aren't stories I told after she died. These are stories I've told all along. And so her dying does not change what she did.
Honestly, good riddance.
Yeah, also. Right. So, anyway, she made things very difficult, and she wanted us to fail, and she was insistent on that moment of our failure. And I was still tough enough to A, think I could fix the problem, and B, I did not want to fail. And again, divorce is not a pretty thing to go through in Utah. And I didn't want that. And so then I had the miscarriage. And then I was going to get my tubes tied permanently, which I was 19 years old. I was 18 at that time, I guess. And in Utah, in order to get your tubes tied at 18 years old, there's a whole realm of things you have to do. And I was starting that process. And actually, just before my 19th birthday, I discovered I was pregnant with my oldest daughter. I regret even the thought of tying my tubes, but the horror from that miscarriage was awful for me. And I guess in that moment, I believed I would be a shitty mother. And so maybe that was the deal. And so now I had a child, and she deserved a dad. And he was really good for a long time. During that time period, he was pretty good. And I had her. And there were a few arguments, and he would kind of push or shove me here or there, but it wasn't horrible. And then I got pregnant with my son, and he threw me around a little bit while I was pregnant with my son. It isn't an everyday occurrence, and when he was a good person, he was a really good person, so he made all of the public things look really nice, right? But like while I was pregnant with my son, he punched the window out of my pickup because I got in it to leave, and he reached in and grabbed the keys, punched the window out, reached in and grabbed the keys. Punched holes in walls because I would duck, and he would, there were places in my home where he had thrown VCRs at me, and they'd gone through the wall and left. I knew I was in trouble. I knew I had places to go and things to do to get back on my feet. But I didn't want people to know what happened. And I especially didn't want to tell my mother. My mom truly believes women that get beat do something to deserve it because they enjoy the drama. And so there were even times in my life, well, it was later, he beat me. We had moved out of state and we came home to visit, and my mom and I'd gotten an argument. He beat me up for fighting with my mom in my mom's house, and she knew, and she said, you look like you needed a beating to me. So I'd gone to his, like, there was this and my mom is not a horrible person, but this one, she just does not understand spousal physical abuse in any way. And right after I had my son, days after I had my son, this is the most horrible part. I told him no, that we were in the 6 weeks and that we couldn't have sex. And he did it anyway. And from behind, because as he reminded me frequently, I had ruined my body having children. That's why he cheated. I ruined my body having children.
Bringing his children into the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I wasn't sexually attractive to him anymore. But I'd anyway done it from behind, and I had started bleeding, and it wouldn't stop. So at my 6-week check, I told the doctor I'm bleeding and it won't stop. And my dad died of colon cancer at 24, and I'm 21, and I'm scared. I was almost 22. So I had to have a colonoscopy. So I'm nursing a baby. I'm 8 weeks postpartum. I'm bleeding. And it's the night before, and I'm trying to get things ready, and I don't remember what I started to cry about, but I started to cry. And he's like, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you. I'm going to be the one stuck with 2 kids and trying to date and trying to have a life while you're dead. Like, I don't know. Because the fear was cancer, right? And I was scared, and it was a reality scare. My dad was 29. He was diagnosed at 25. I was 22. Like, it was a very real fear for me. So I said, I would trade places with you any day and have you be the dead one and raise these kids. It was not. He was not amused with that statement. And that was a pretty good beating. And I can remember him pushing me and kicking me. And I was up underneath the baby's bassinet, trying not to make noise and trying not to bump it because he was asleep in it. Because that's what the beating was for. Saying I wished he was dead, which is not what I said. But I had my colonoscopy the next day, and I came out of my colonoscopy, and when I came to, I was like, who dressed me? Because I knew I was covered in bruises. And I woke up at my mom's. You know, you come out of it and you're like, who dressed me? That was my first question. Not do I have cancer, not am I dying, not who dressed me. And my sister and him had dressed me. And my sister never asked one question, not one. And I know I was covered. And of course, then I go to the doctor, and the result is I just have a very bad tear. And he said, you know, it's a pretty violent tear, and it's rare for this to be caused by childbirth, but it could be. Is there anything you need to tell me? And I said, nope, must have been childbirth, and walked away. Oh. And so that had to heal. Anyway, over the year, and then he'd be good for like 9 or 10 months, and then he would just lose it. And he had gone to work for his parents. So if being under his control wasn't bad enough, I was completely under his mother's. And so I was out. I'm done. I took my kids. I moved to Wyoming. I was going to go to beauty school, which I did. And he followed me. And I divorced him in Wyoming, actually. And God bless Wyoming. The 2 years I was there, he never touched me. The only time I was beaten in those 2 years is when we came home to visit. He beat me for fighting with my mom. Because he was scared in Wyoming because of what they do to people who hit their wife in Wyoming. Like the first or second day he was there, he's out on location, and the guy showed up just beat to shit. And like, what happened to him? And he said nobody saw a thing. So the guy had got out of jail for beating his wife, and they'd taken him out on location and beat the shit out of him.
As they should have.
As it works in Wyoming, like you just don't know.
Yeah.
So I was pretty
Should
safe
be
in
like
Wyoming.
that everywhere, but
Yeah, I was pretty safe in Wyoming. And so then we got divorced, or we filed all the paperwork for divorce, and I moved home, and he went through some stuff that was really bad for him. And he came to me and said, I've learned my lesson. I can't be without you and the kids. This was horrible for me, blah, blah, blah. And we stopped our divorce in the state of Wyoming, and we reconciled in Utah. And it was probably 6 months before the first time he hit me. And we immediately had another child. And at that point, it wasn't an everyday occurrence anyway. It was like once or twice a year that he would do it. But in the meantime, he would have these affairs after affair after affair. And I finally divorced him. I actually finally had an affair. Not proud, just at my wit's end. That affair lasted exactly 24 hours before I confessed and kicked him out. And we got divorced. And during that time of divorce, there were things that happened that were horrifying. I needed him to sign some paperwork for insurance for one of the kids one time, and I went out to his house to do it, and he screamed and hollered at me, and he held me up on his wall off the ground by his hand and left a big old handprint. And when I say they'll kill me and I'll run my mouth to the last, I mean it. Because while I stood there with my neck against I said, don't let that warrior fucking raise my kids. You give them to my mother. That was going to be I thought I was dying. Those were my final words. Like, just so you know, she's not good enough to raise my kids. Give them to my mother. And he let me go. That. And I don't know why he let me go, other than I don't know if he didn't want to face my mom, or the thought of actually having to be a parent, or what the hell in that moment. But he let me go. And some of the things that are the worst about those times is I called the cops. Not while it was happening, but like the day later when I was safe. And I had cops say to me, if your children were in the home, we're going to take your children. Are you ready for that? You really want to file a report? I had policemen say to me, did you hit him back? Well, yeah, I fucking hit him back. Sometimes when he kicked me, I bit his leg and left marks. Like, yeah. Yes, yeah. I fought back.
What are you supposed to do?
You're just as guilty as he is. As soon as you throw a first punch, you're just as guilty as he is. And then, of course, there was always that threat that they would call Department of Family Services and I would lose my children. And I wasn't willing. And so I divorced him and tried to stay out of his way, and tried to just function. And I was working, and I had a reasonably good clientele, and I had an inexpensive home, and things were going okay. And the man I had started seeing had left me for someone else. And I was a mess. And I dated another guy for a while and he just didn't fit into my life. He's a very nice guy, so good friends with my kids, but um heartbroken and done. And my ex-husband lost his job and didn't have a pot to piss in, and his 19-year-old girlfriend left him. And we were in our 30s by then. And his 19-year-old girlfriend left him. And he didn't understand why she left the day he lost his job. And I was like, and by then we
Why
had
you
a
don't date a
14-year-old daughter.
19-year-old when you're 30.
Yeah, we had a 14-year-old daughter. And she and the 14-year-old daughter couldn't get along. Well, they're the same fucking age.
Yeah. Wonder why.
They're literally arguing over lip gloss. Jackass. Pay attention. Like, you can't. Anyway, yeah, it was a thing. And so, um, because he had lost everything, there was a huge, like, I get it now. So he came to me and I get it now. And I swear to God and la la la. And I fell for it again and remarried him. And in the 13 months that marriage lasted, that we lived together, the marriage lasted longer than that because I didn't bother to divorce him because I really liked having his insurance. In the 13 months that marriage lasted, there were 4 girlfriends. There were, while he was not working, he was also not helping with children. So I was working and taking the kids to dance and football and and all of the things. And I knew I'd made a mistake. And then I'm like, shit, because now I'm working. So I'm in a position where I'm going to have to pay him alimony and get no child support if I divorce him. So I made a couple calls and a friend of mine hired him. I don't know if he'll come to me.
I love that, actually.
So
Gets him a job so you can leave him.
he had a CDL.
That's so smart.
Yeah. His unemployment was running out, and yeah. So I had some favors and I used them to get him a job. And he got a job, and I was like, I just need 6 months to get shit rolling. And then within that 6 months, he got very angry at me. And by now I'm dealing with, my son was born. I don't know how to explain what happens when you have a son, or if it's just my son. But he was born my protector. From the time he was very small. He never liked his dad. And he's 30 now. And even now, if you came at me, you would be really sorry. Like, he was just born my protector. Even as a small child, like as a baby, when his grandmother, my mother-in-law, would walk toward me, he'd just start to scream. He wouldn't let her hold him. Ever. He just never connected with his dad, and he never, like, I left them alone one time and came home and my son was just 2 and his dad they were screaming at each other in the kitchen. I'm like, what in the hell? I got home and there's all this. What is happening? I could hear my son screaming from outside the house. He was saying, I just want my mom. You're not my mom. And so I go in and I'm like, what in the hell has happened here? Like, what is going on? And my husband said, I don't know what the hell's wrong with him. He won't tell me what's wrong with him. He wants something. He won't tell me what it is. And I'm like, buddy, what's wrong? And he goes, he just wants some milk, Mom. And I said, You couldn't get him milk? And he said he wouldn't tell me. He stood in this kitchen and screamed, "You get my mother." And I'm like, okay, well, the adult thing to do would be like, okay, mom's going to be home in a minute. She'll get whatever you need. Sit down, watch TV. I'm like, my mom was next door. You couldn't go get my mom. He'll talk to my mom. Like when I come home and there's a fight, I'd like to be able to see which one of you's two and which one's not. Like, and weirdly enough, in all of the meetings I acquired in that marriage, he did not cross my children ever. I am not blameless. I continued to fight with his mom, even though I knew it pissed him off. I continued to do things that I knew triggered him because sometimes it triggered him and sometimes it didn't. And I did things like I was pretty mouthy in public because he would never have hit me in public. So if I wanted to say something that I thought was maybe going to get a backhand, I said it in public because he couldn't hit me in public. And then I paid for it later. So I'm not innocent. I knew what buttons I was pushing and I pushed them. I didn't just cower down and let him be the boss. And so I'll take part of the blame for my mouth. But he really thinks that if he hurt my kids, he would fall asleep and I would slit his throat. And so he never did. But when my son was older, and I don't know, he was between 12 and 15, and I don't remember the exact age, my ex-husband had me pinned against a wall and he was screaming at me and pointing his finger in my face. And he had never been violent in front of the children until then. He had never, but 2 or 3 times in that time period, he got shitty with me. And he got shitty with me in front of just my son, not my daughters. It was almost like he was trying to teach him, trying to show him that I was bad, or trying to teach him how a man runs this. I don't know what the hell he had in mind. In that moment, I looked over his shoulder and I saw my son's face and thought, if I don't get out of here, my son's going to kill him. My son was behind him and just looking at him like, someday I'll be bigger than you. And I thought, we got to get out. We got to get out. And so I told my kids, like, I think my older two, I think that maybe, and they're like, we don't know what the fuck you're doing here. If you're here for us, you're going the wrong way. We don't want him. He's horrible. And so we went. And this time when we went. And I tried to maintain a relationship for him and his children. He didn't want. I'd beg him to see the kids. One night when he was supposed to have the kids, I'd change the locks on all my doors. And I woke up and he was sitting at the foot of my bed and he was supposed to have our kids. And I'm like, what are you doing here? Where are my kids? And he said, I just want you to know you can change the locks as many times as you want. You'll never be safe from me.
Oh, shit.
So, and he didn't hit me. He just quietly got up and walked out.
He didn't need to hit you. He'd done his job. He scared
And
you.
yeah. Yeah. And I had a really good friend at the time that was like, why are you and he was male. And absolutely just a friend and very good to my children. And he was a coach to my children in some of their activities. And he kept saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? I'll help you. It'll be fine. Let me kick his ass. Like, what are you doing? Like, let me get you out. And he had a wife, and it was very much just a friendship. And I was like, you don't need my problems. And he passed away that summer. So one of the final straws with my ex-husband was that I found out he'd been with my sister on a pretty regular basis. He'd had an affair with my sister. She's my favorite. So she and I were having a verbal discussion, not about that, about something else entirely. There was so much going on in the family. My step grandmother was dying. My parents were out of town. All this shit was going on. She'd had a fist fight with my other sister. They'd been in a fist fight. She'd called the cops on my other sister, all of this stuff. And her trick is to get this close to your face and scream at you and then call the cops when you hit her.
What a coward.
She's fun. Anyway, she'd come to the house and she was like, if you don't want your kids to see their aunt get arrested, you better get them out of here. And I was like, what are you doing? You've lost your mind. Mom and dad are trying to bury dad's mom. All of this shit is going on. What are you doing? And I don't remember what possessed her. And she said, this is why your husband sleeps with me. And she said it in front of my kids. And I had just had neck surgery, still had a big old, they just replaced a disc in my neck and I still had a big old stitches in the patch over my neck. And I was like, what did you just say to me? And I was so angry that my kids heard it. I'm like, run. She just belted back to her truck. And I was hot on her heels. She shut that door. I pounded on the glass and she drove away. And I turned around and he didn't say anything. He stood there and he didn't say anything. And I said, you need to pack your things.
Is that how you found out? Like, you didn't know that they were
No,
together
I
until that
knew.
moment?
I knew. I knew. And I had this exit strategy. And he'd gotten his job and he'd almost been there long enough to have enough paychecks to prove that I needed child support. And, you know, I had an exit strategy. I was going to get out of there. And, you know, he had backed me into a corner with the kid watching, and I had to have this neck surgery, and which, you know, like, there were things that had to be done before you can go. And I don't want to discourage anybody from leaving, but you don't walk out the door and 40,000 people are standing there ready to help you. That's not what happens. And my dad would have been supportive, but I was not smart enough to go through my dad. I thought I was going to have to go through my mom. And she very much was of the belief that if you had put yourself in this position, then you damn well deserved it. And you must have liked it. That's what she used to say. You must have liked it. It was just so much. And in that moment where my kids heard that, and my older two children very much understood what that meant, I was just done. And so I said, you gotta go. And we were having a very rocky relationship. The day before my neck surgery, I was getting things ready to go, and I'd gotten in the shower, and he got in the shower with me and made his big demand for sex. And I was like, no. I'm like at my wit's end of scared. There's a certain percentage of this surgery that could paralyze me. I could come out of this never being able to laugh or talk again. There are things when they cut the front of your throat open to change things in your neck that could happen that are very scary. And I was scared again, medically scared. And he was very angry because I wouldn't have sex with him. And I stood my ground. No, I'm not going to do this, whatever. And I gathered up my things, and we were going to drive out in our car, and my mom was going to follow in her car because he was only going to stay for the surgery, and then he was going to go home. My dad was going to watch the kids, but he just didn't want to hang out with me at the hospital. Well, so he was just going to stay for the surgery and go home. My mom was going to bring me home in a couple of days. And so I just gathered up my suitcase, and my mom lived next door, and I walked next door and put it in her truck and said, let's go. And she said, where's your husband? And I said, I don't think he's coming. Because I had said, like, if you think I need you, you're out of your fucking mind. I don't. And so I had gotten my mom's car and we were driving, and she's like, he's following us. And I'm like, I guess let him follow us. I tried to lose him 2 or 3 times, but anyway, he showed up in Salt Lake and he was there for the surgery and he bought me a bracelet with some things for the kids in it. And he, all of this big show in front of everybody. And then we get home. He went home like he was going to. Mom and I stayed in Salt Lake a couple of days like we had planned. And then I came home and I was like, this marriage is over. And then my grandma got terminally ill. And I took my wedding ring off. And, a week later, I've still got the stitches and all the shit happens with my sister. And I'm like, just pack your stuff, just go. And at that point, I was a different person. I was a different person because I knew my son was coming to a head. And I didn't want this to affect my children. And I was dumb enough to think that they hadn't heard the screaming and the beating and that they didn't know what was happening in the home. I was done because now twice I'd had a medical thing that was just like he would say shit like, who thinks that way, right? You could be paralyzed tomorrow and then I'll never have good sex again. So can't I just have one more time before, like, I'm packing to go. And then my sister threw that out there for my kids to hear. Like, you're not going without anyway, no matter what happens to me. Like, it was just so much, So at that point, my grandma had actually passed that day, and my mom called me and said she wanted him to be a pallbearer at her funeral. So I called him and said, so you're going to pretend to be my husband for the weekend. So get your shit together. We'll take the camper out. We'll go to this funeral. And we did. We went to the funeral. Everybody thought we were a happy couple. I went home. He started hauling stuff back in the house. I'm like, you don't live here. Take your shit. Go. See the camper? Your new home. Bye. You don't live here. So I found that backbone in watching my son not have to have it. If that makes any sense. Like, I am not going to stand by why my son has to protect me from you. And done. Right? And so he left. And like I said, during that time period, he was like on my footboard, all of the things. And so then I had this friend die in July. And so all of that happened in like June. And I had this friend die in July. And my children were very close to this friend. And my youngest was about 8 at the time. And she was devastated. Her friend had died. It was her first loss. And so I had called him and said, I need you to pretend to be a father. I need you to show up to the viewing and the funeral and be there for your kids. That's what I need from you. I don't give a shit about anything else. And he was already living with his girlfriend, not my sister. Because there was several. So anyway.
Just couch hopping.
Yeah. Not this one, not my sister, the other girlfriend, his boss?
Yeah.
Wait, your friend?
No.
Oh, different
I was like, damn.
I was like,
his immediate
your picker is broken for real.
My friend is Mel. They got him.
Okay.
Well,
got you.
But don't think I didn't date him later to prove a point. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, we're at the funeral, we're at the viewing, and I'm watching for him and I'm texting him like, where are you? And all of the things. And this is the moment that broke me. There's a moment that breaks you. And this was it. My youngest child looked around the corner and saw the casket. And I had tried to talk to her about what she was going to see. And I had tried to convince her not to go. And she had said, no, I need to say goodbye. And I wanted to understand that. And I wanted her to have what she needed because this man had been very important to her. And I wanted her to have the support she needed. And to be honest, I was about half losing it because he had been my friends too. And I needed somebody to care for them that wasn't attached to the problem. I was dealing with my own grief and I needed help. I needed support. I needed him to be a fucking dad. One fucking time. And I literally had not asked him before that. One fucking time, I need you to show up here and be a dad. That's what I need. And he did not show up. And she came around that corner and she started to sob. And I had no words. And I was trying to hold her and comfort her. And I was losing it. I hurt. I couldn't stop her hurt. I couldn't stop my son's hurt. I needed him to be a dad. And he wasn't there. And I have a little brother. He's quite a bit younger than me. He's like 13 years younger than me. And bless his heart, he was there. And he immediately turned around and he said to his girlfriend, "Take the little one out of here, get her out of here." And his girlfriend gathered her up and took her outside and took her walking. And my brother grabbed me and hugged me. He's a big bear of a man. And grabbed me and hugged me and held me and he said, "It's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay." And I just knew in that moment it wasn't. If you can't be here for her right now, I don't give a damn. I won't fight anymore for this. I won't fight for this relationship. I won't fight for your seeing them or being their dad. I'm not gonna fight for it anymore. If you don't want to, if you can't be here for her today, she doesn't need you for anything. And we finished the funeral, or we finished the viewing, and the next day for the funeral, the son of a bitch showed up. And we were all dressed like you dress for a funeral. And I just have this habit of, like, if we're all dressed up, we take a picture. And so I handed the camera to my mom and said, "Will you take a picture of me and my kids?" And he stood in it. And I said, "You'll never be in a family picture with me again. If you'd like a picture with the kids, figure it out on your own. This picture is for me. This picture is for my new start." And he looked at me and I went, "Move." And we took that picture and it hangs on my living room wall, actually. It's the moment everything changed, right? And I was not going back no matter what it took. And you don't step out and have 100% of help. And you don't, yes, there's a women's shelter, but the rules are kind of crazy and it's hard. And no matter how many times you see it on TV or whatever, there are people out there who believe that you got yourself into this mess and you should get yourself out of this mess. And an exit strategy is hard. And everybody knows that that's when you're in the most danger. And they tell you that. People tell you that all the time, but nobody's there to protect you. And you call the cops and they're going to call social services on you. And there's these things, right? And they're in your head. And in that moment, not one of them mattered. In that moment, I was going to get out no matter what. Because he couldn't be there for my kids anymore. Which is crazy, right? Like, all the things he'd done to me, the times that, like, when I left him in Wyoming, when I was in beauty school, I left him because my beauty school teacher saw the bruises from when we had come home and he'd beat the hell out of me. We came home for the weekend. He beat the hell out of me in our hometown. We went back to Wyoming. I took my smock off in the lab and she came in and said, "What the hell?" And I left him because I was embarrassed because people knew. Didn't give a shit about my safety I was embarrassed. That's why I left him the first time. I was embarrassed that people knew. And in the end, in that moment, when I finally was like, we have to get out of this no matter what, I didn't care what we had to eat or where we had to live. So we finished the funeral. And 2 days later, I drove to Wyoming and got a job. And that weekend, after I'd already gotten a job, so I was playing it pretty fast and loose, I gathered up my kids and took them to the fair up there. and like, how do you like it here? Like, I took him to my favorite restaurant, and I used credit cards I shouldn't have used, right? Like, I got myself into some debt, and I'm like, how do you like it here? What do you think? Maybe we should. And they were like, yeah, we love it here. Good, because I signed a fucking lease yesterday. And so, yeah. And my kids were older. I had 2 kids in high school and one in the 4th grade. And I remember thinking, can you make your older kids move? And I gave them the option to stay with my parents, and they chose not to. So I had kids that moved in the middle of 9th and 11th grade. And we went to Wyoming, and we were good. And we were strong, and we didn't need it. And he, I moved kind of sneakily, right? So I left the kids in school. I started my job in August, and I would work in there on weekends so that he couldn't tell we had moved. And the kids were still in school, and they would stay with my mom when I was gone. And I just was gradually moving things. And we had end dates for when the kids would come, football season, end of trimester, the things, so that we didn't mess up any schooling or anything. And we had all these goals and whatever. And so I did it really sneakily, but he caught on. It was about 5 weeks in, he caught on. He hadn't called to talk to his kids since the funeral. And we were 7 or 8 weeks out from that. And he called. I was in Wyoming, and he was yelling and screaming, and I want my kids. And I'm like, then I won't see you. And he threatened to kill me, and he threatened to kill himself. And I called the cops and said, I think that my ex-husband killed himself. This is where you can find him. And they got there just in time to see him getting into his truck with his gun. And I don't know if he was coming after me or going to do himself in, and I don't really care. And they finally took him into custody. Not for what he'd said to me, but to protect him. The trick was to protect. I had to convince them that they were protecting him and not me. So they finally took him into custody, and I finally got a restraining order. And even when I got that restraining order, I drove home in the middle of the night, met a cop at the Wendy's parking lot to sign the paperwork to get that restraining order. And that cop I said, is he out? Did you let him go? And I mean, he had even called my mom and said, I'm on a mental health hold, and I need somebody to babysit me for 72 hours. Will you babysit me? And my mom's like, no. She didn't know what was going on completely, because I couldn't be completely honest with her, because like I said, she has some interesting views. I mean, she thought I was mad about the funeral, and she was willing to back me about that, but she didn't have all the details. And so she said no, she wouldn't take him in. And so I said to the cop, is he out? And the cop said, yeah, we turned him over to his brother. And I'm like, the one that has a record for beating his wife? We didn't look at his record. So, you've signed my death warrant. And he just said, if you don't want our help, fine. And I'm like, I'm begging you for help. So I signed the papers, and I went and got a protective order the next day, and they gave me a date for the protective order, and they had seized his guns the night that he had gotten in trouble, because he was going to shoot himself. Or he actually told the cop later, that I found out when the cop testified at the hearing. He told the cop, I don't know if I'm going to kill her or me, but I'm solving the problem.
And they let him go?
Yeah, they released him to his brother, who had a record.
That's
but they took his guns away.
crazy.
I was like, so I was very disillusioned by the police force. This is insane. And I filed for a protective order. I went to court to get my protective order. We went to court. I took my son, because he was the only one that had ever witnessed whatever. And the judge was really leery to sign or to swear my son in. He was like, "Are you sure you want him to testify?" And I'm like, I'd been sitting in court all day watching all these people come through, and their kids had all testified. And he was like, "Are you sure you want him in court? Are you sure you want him to testify?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I thought it was weird. Anyway, we get up there, and the judge said to him, "Hey, what do you want to do about this?" And he said, "I want a divorce." And the judge said, "I bet she wants a divorce too, but that's not what we're talking about today. Today, I want to know what you have to say about the allegations in this paperwork." And he said, "She's my wife, and I'll hit her when I want to."
He said that in open court?
To the judge. As an answer to a question.
What did the judge
say?
Who was mortified, and you could see him going, said, "There's other allegations in this paperwork, sir. Do you want to deny anything?" And he said, "You cannot rape your wife."
Wait.
And I heard, because
your ex-husband said you cannot rape your wife. Okay.
To the judge. And I heard my son go, "Oh," because he didn't know about it. So the judge said, "I've heard enough. I don't even need to hear any testimony. Like, clearly you did what she says you did. I only half read the police report, and I know you did what she says you did. And so I'm going to issue this. And do I need to make arrangements for you to see your children?" And he said, "I don't want anything to do with them. They're just like their fucking mother." And in one of the most horrific, weak moments of my life, I begged the judge to make him be their dad. "Please don't let him do this to my kids. Please make him dad." And he said, "No, ma'am, I won't." And issued a permanent protective order and banged his gavel. And my ex-husband flung the door open between, you've been in a courtroom, there's that little gate you go through to talk to the judge, and he flung it, stomped out of the court. And that was it. For months, I didn't hear from him. I heard from a lawyer about a year later for a divorce, but that's how my son found out he had raped me. And then I later found out that the judge was actually a volunteer coach for the football team, and he recognized my son. And he had later, in fact, that day had later said to my son, "Hey, bud, if there's anything you need to talk about ever, which was very kind of him. But he didn't take any testimony from my son, so he didn't have to recuse himself at all. That was the end of it. And I got my protective order, and there were some humiliating parts of even that. Like, I had to take it to the high school where I had to hand it to a woman that I went to school with. And she had to read it to know what to put on the paperwork for rather what he could do with the kids. You know what I mean? I had to take it to a grade school. And it was hard to have people know what had happened behind closed doors. And a week later, I go to a football game here to watch my son play, and a woman I went to school with said, "Oh my God, I heard the craziest thing. Somebody had you confused with one of your sisters." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, my cousin so-and-so was in court last week, and she swears that you were getting a protective order. Your husband admitted to hitting you and raping you and all kinds of things." I'm like, "Not Heidi. Nobody would dare. It has to be one of her sisters." And I said, "No, it was me." Humiliating.
So
yeah, what a shitty thing to bring up, even if it was your sister. Like, what was their goal there?
I don't think she's still a good friend of mine. I think she really was just, "Oh my God, Heidi, I can't believe there's people out there who don't know you any better than this." It was like that.
Now, how did that make you feel? Did that make you feel any kind of level of unseen?
No, it, I had worked really hard to portray that very strong, having been sexually abused as a child. I had specifically made myself look big and mean to protect myself. And so, no, it just, then I just knew that uh, I had managed to betray that. And the embarrassment came from that facade being gone. I was embarrassed that people knew now that I wasn't as tough as I used to be. Um, yeah, I was embarrassed by that. And I was embarrassed. It was just a hard thing. And so and then when all of it was said and done, I had to drive back to Wyoming, and you have to turn that paperwork in because it's nationally recognized. You have to turn that paperwork in the district you're in so that they know. And so I stopped at the police department, and it was so amazing to me. I had to fight for that paper so hard in Utah, and they treated me like such shit every time I tried to get that paper in Utah. And they threatened to take my kids, and all of the things. And I got to Wyoming, and I went to the police department, and I said I need to put a restraining order on record. And the lady said, okay, the chief will want to talk to you about it. And I'm like, shit, here we go. And when he came out, he said, do you mind if I call you Heidi? And I said, no, I prefer that. And he said, that's why I didn't want to call you Mrs. And he said, hey, I want to look you in the eye and say, if you think you see his truck, if someone calls and hangs up that you don't know, if you wonder if you saw him in the mall, if your neighbor says somebody creepy was around, call us. Call us 20 times a day. We would rather check on you 20 times a day than find you dead. And if any of my officers ever do anything different than that, you let me know immediately.
Oh my God. That made me cry.
And he said, I'll call the sheriff's department and let them know. That is the difference between, it's 2 hours. It's 2 damn hours. And of course, when I moved my kids up, I had to, again, put that protective order on record at the school. And maybe it was that they didn't know me, and maybe I just saw it different because everybody has their own view of things, right? But I took that protective order to the high school, and I turned it in the day my son came before my girls did because of activity stuff. He was done with football and he was ready to be with his mom, and he didn't let me off alone without any protection. And it's funny. I took it to the high school and I gave it to his counselor. In the school system, they're so different, and they test you coming in to see where to place you and what classes you should be in and all of that. And so they told me it was going to be an all-day deal, and I said okay. And he went off to test, and I gave the guy the paperwork and said, the gist of this is no one can pick him up but me. No one can see him but me. We don't have family here. Me. See my face? no one else.
Mhm.
That's the gist of this paperwork. And when I went back to pick him up after the testing, the counselor said, "Can I just talk to you for a minute before we go get him?" And I said, "Yeah." And he took me into his office and he said, "I read your protective order." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he said, "It's my job." And he said, "I want you to understand that I'm a licensed counselor. I'm not somebody the school system put in to work on your son's schedule like they do in Utah. I'm a licensed counselor. That's what I do. I am going to have a conversation with your son and invite him to talk to me about anything he'd like and offer that counseling to him under the situation. And you also, as a student's mother, have the right to come in here and have a chat with me anytime you want." And then he was like, very like, "This should not happen to a human being. And whatever we need to do to support you, you let us know." And that's not the reaction I got in Utah. It was like, "Well, I'll put it in our file and I guess I won't let him take his kids, you know?" And in Wyoming, it was such a different, it's huge. It's huge. And so I was very frustrated with the police department here, and especially seeing the vast difference in what happens in other places. I was frustrated. And we're talking about something that happened 20 years ago. And I'm definitely not shit talking every cop out there. But the ones I dealt with were shitty. They were shitty. Most of them were men I had gone to school with, and I think somewhere in the back of their mind they didn't believe it could be happening to me. And it was shitty. And so we moved and we got out of it. And I swore off men, and I would have this great conversation with people who asked me out on a date. But yeah, we could go out on a date. I will never be in love with you. We will never get married, and don't get attached.
Said, "I just want the
You want
free
to
dinner."
hang? Great. Yeah.
Can you please
This
just,
is going to
yeah.
involve a lot of your wallet and none of my emotion, but okay. And I was very upfront about it. Like, I might really grow to like you, and even love you in some way, but I will never, I'm not up for like being the wife. So if that's going to be a problem, let's skip dinner.
Let's get dinner.
Like,
Oh
I
my
don't,
God.
like, I need you to understand that I'm never doing that again. Horrible marriage, love of my life gone, done. And those were two separate men. Horrible marriage, love of my life, two separate men. And that second one really did me in at that time. It was very much I don't understand why I can't make this work because I know that's where I belong. Which, like skip to the end, that's the man I'm married to now. But that, but it took 20 years. So, that second one really was like, I'm never doing another shitty marriage and I'll never fall in love like I did that. So walk away now if that's going to be a problem. And I dated, I dated, I dated one guy for like 18 months, and then he's so stupid. He came and picked me up for lunch and he's like, "Let's go look at engagement rings." And I'm like, "God damn it."
He said, "Did you
There
think I
was a
was
rule.
kidding?"
No, take me back to work.
Take me back to work.
The other night,
Should have.
no,
No.
you sure won't.
Wait, was that in Utah too?
That was in Wyoming.
Whoa. I
I
was
stayed
like,
in
oh my
Wyoming for
God.
12 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I was in Wyoming a long time.
18
And
months and he wanted an engagement ring. That is wild.
which, that part wasn't the wild part for me.
What was the wild part?
I said that's never happened. Like, I don't know where you got from here to there. He's like,
Okay.
"Well, we all
yeah.
went to Lagoon together. I was hanging out with your kids." I don't give a shit.
Yeah, you're like, you didn't
Yeah.
listen.
Like there's one rule, and that was it.
And you broke it. So take me back to work and don't call me again. Yeah.
Yeah, lose my
Wow.
number. And I
Lose
saw
my
him a couple
number.
times after that, and then my dumbass ex-husband, he actually gave me full custody of the kids. I had actually been in a car accident, and he had taken some money out of my savings account, and he owed me like $35,000. So when he finally got ready to divorce me, his lawyer
No
called and
biggie,
said, if
just
you'll forget about that
35,000.
$35,000, he'll sign the kids over to you and never see them again. And I'm like, did you just offer to sell me my kids for $35,000? And he said, no, ma'am, that would be illegal. And I said, yeah, send the papers.
Shit.
Hell yeah. Sign a document that says you'll pay child support and never see my kids. I'm all over it. Best $35,000 I ever spent. Have a nice day. So, yeah. Oh, probably not the best, because he did make me blood test all the children. So that was another $1,000 I spent to prove that my children were his. And our oldest daughter looks like him in the right light. And the other two, my youngest is an absolute clone of me. She looks like me, only younger and redheaded. And my son, you can't look at my son and I go, oh, that's Heidi's kid. Like, anyway, they were blood tested. He referred to my son as your son this and your son that, from the day he was born. And I'm like, I'll take him every day. So anyway,
You're like, you
so
wonder
yes,
why he hates
that's
you.
$36,000. I wonder why my son hates you. I wonder why my son went to court and changed his name to my maiden name, you stupid piece of shit. Anyway, yeah. So I got the kids. I bought the kids for $36,000, and every minute of it was worth it. But 3 years later, he comes back into my life and he's like, I want custody. The other two had become adults. And he's like, I want custody of the little one.
You said for $35,000.
I'm like, no, you don't. She was 13. And I'm like, no, thank you. And he, served me at Christmas time. So thinking I wouldn't have money. And I called in some favors and borrowed some money. And I got a lawyer. I had him served on his birthday. I'm like, could you just wait to serve that till that would be great. And I had him served on his birthday, and we went to court a couple times, and I have adult children sitting in court ready to testify against him. And eventually I gave him a very, he got to see her every other Christmas and every other Easter, and 2 weeks in the summer, but no weekend visits, no. And he got to call her once a week. Was the ending of that, which I finally agreed to after he got arrested for beating his second wife damn near to death, just so you know. So anyway, he's a joy. He was a joy. And he continued to be a joy, but we were so stable. We were the four of us, hard to beat. I worked 3 jobs. The kids went to work. They helped pay bills. We did it. Whatever we had to do, right? And I had rules, they were the rules. And so there were 2 or 3 men I dated before I started dating my second husband, who had been an old friend of mine that I met while I was in beauty school. But anyway, there were 2 or 3 men that I dated, and I stuck to the rules. This is the rule. I don't love you that way. I'll never love you that way. We're great friends. This is going to involve your checkbook, not my emotion. This is it, right? You're going to pay for dinner. My kids are going to come first. Don't ask me about holidays. Thank you. Have a nice day. Do not discuss a ring with me, ever. And there were 2 or 3 of them that I dated, and 2 or 3 of them were dumb enough to be like, hey, let's talk about moving this to the next level. And I was like, why'd you ruin it?
Why'd you ruin the rule? There was a rule.
You're having a good time. Well, I thought maybe things had changed. And I'm like, no. So when men tell you women are clingy, that's a lie. When men say that they don't want to commit and women do, lies. All of that is lies. So anyway, then I started seeing my second husband, and I wasn't exclusively seeing my second husband because there were rules. Like, this is not right. And so he was an old friend, and I'd been friends with him for many years, and we were going to church together, and we had kids. Our boys are very, very close in age, and they were friends, and so we were seeing each other. We're going to dinner once in a while, whatever, and it was very like hush hush, which because we were going to church together, we don't want people to know that we were seeing each other, and that was fine with me because that landed right in the, you know,
Yeah. Lined
and
up with the
then
rules.
I don't really understand what happened. I went on a girls' trip. Um, Me and my best friend went to a concert. Um, Not unusual, not whatever. And for whatever reason, while we were on that girls' trip, I don't know if he thought I was gonna like, when we were in like Windover. I don't know if he thought I was gonna meet a millionaire and pack up and go. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but he lost it. And he's like on Facebook, Heidi, I love you so much. Please, like openly on my wall. I'm like, oh, good. Crazy. That's what I. And I,
Crazy.
uh huh. And I messaged him. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you're one of my oldest friends. Of course, I love you. Not like this. Make this stop. And he, no, I love you. I think we should make a go of this, blah, blah, blah. And at this point, I'm turning 40. Um, and somewhere in my mind, he was a decent guy. And um, I had no security, and I was never going to have any. My job doesn't, you don't get a job that has benefits with when you do hair and nails. And I was working side jobs, and I was working, and I somewhere was like, I can make a go of this. I mean, I loved him as a friend, and it offered a type of security for me and the kids, and I thought he could be a companion. Um, and we got married. He was like, during a fight, you have to marry me. I want to marry you. So, oh, what did he say to me? I can't believe I thought about marrying you. And I said, I can't believe you thought about marrying me either, because I'm not ever getting married again. And I walked out of his house, went to go to my truck, and he ran and got in it was a Tahoe, got in my Tahoe and sat on the passenger seat and refused to get out till we talked things out. Somewhere in there, he proposed to me and convinced me that that was probably a good idea. And I said, okay, I'll marry you. And the next day he went and got a ring, and I don't know. And he gave it to me at lunch at Taco Bell, Taco John's. Hey, you want to meet me at lunch at Taco John's? Here's your ring. Like,
Here's your
no
ring.
romance. No. Yeah. In the parking lot. Yeah. Taco John's. Uh, yeah. And so I did it. And I didn't know this guy at all like I thought I did. And the minute we were married, my life was a whole other. We went from being good friends and laughing and joking to being like, it was awful all of the time. And um, I had some structural problems in my nose that left me snoring pretty heavily and not breathing well at night. And that was something that he just could not, like, he would wake me up and stop snoring. And so I'd go get on the couch, and then it'd be a big fight about why I was sleeping on the couch. Well, I can't stop snoring. I'm not snoring to annoy you. And so arguments were with him were he never hit me. And to be fair, I think there was a real fear that I could take him from his point of view. And I probably could have. He doesn't have the anger gene that I have. And so anyway, when we would fight, he would say very ugly things, and he was the very verbal abusive. And so fights with him were very like, I did you a favor marrying you. Nobody else would have you. Have you looked in the mirror? Like, you're not a pretty woman. I was thinner then, but there was a lot of your fat. I was about 50 pounds thinner then. There was a lot of your fat. You're not pretty. Nobody else is going to have you. I've done you this favor. you're going to do things the way I want them done, and you're going to make this perfect in public because that's what my parents need, and that's what I need, is to have this marriage look perfect in public. But I'm not attracted to you. And you're going to do your share financially, which I've always worked. I wasn't against doing part of it, but when you make 5 times more money than me, the chances are probably you're going to pay 5 times more of the bills, and that's just how math works. And
Right.
it was just very, that one was very emotionally and mentally horrifying. And we lived together, I don't know, 18 months before I left. And um, I'd left him and I'd been gone about 18 months, and he messaged me, he said, I've got to make this marriage work. I'll figure it out. I'll go to counseling, whatever. And I did go back to him in that time, because at some point you're like, I'm at a point, my age is at a point where this is it. I'm not going to have any security if I don't do something. And so I went back to him, and that didn't last very long. I got very ill. They told me I wasn't going to live, which they were wrong, obviously. That was in 2017. They told me I had like 18 months to live. Wrong.
Wrong.
That wrong. And so it took me a while to find a doctor that would fix the problem, which it was an intestinal thing and kind of stupid. But anyway, during that time, I was in a position where I was like, I have to make this work for the medical insurance. I have to make this work because I just cannot fail at another divorce. Like maybe he's right. Like, nobody else will have me. I am older. I am not as pretty as I once was. I am chunkier than I used to be. I am, loud and mouthy. And his mother was heavily involved in our marriage also. And so the second marriage, I don't have like big horror stories to tell. I can tell you he called me names. I can tell you, like, he used to get mad and jump on the bed and scream at me about what a child I was.
While he was jumping on the bed and screaming at you.
Crying. And I would just stand, like, there was very little crying when he and I fought because I just wasn't the same. But also, he would scream and holler and tell me, like, you're the worst cook in the world. I don't even know why you try. And so I'd just sweep the crock pot off the counter full of shit. Like, and it'd be all over. Like, and he would scream, I don't know why you got to be so violent. And I was like, I didn't feel like violence to me. Just solving your problem, motherfucker. Fix your own dinner. And yeah, but he says that was violent, and I can recognize that he felt violated by that in some manner. And so then the verbal stuff would happen, and then when it was over, he would be like, well, when people are mad, they say things they don't mean, and you need to just forget I said it. And that's not how it works. And he was like, don't you regret stuff you say to me when we're fighting? And I'm like, no.
No, I mean everything I say, motherfucker. And
Everything
so do you.
I said I meant. And he looked dumbfounded.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and also,
like, you called me a pussy when I was jumping on the bed. Well, yeah, because I think that's a pussy move to jump on the bed. Like,
and also, like, you don't act like, well, what I said when I was mad, I didn't mean. I mean, maybe sometimes. I don't think it's I didn't mean it. It's I didn't mean to say it out loud.
I didn't mean for you to know I think you're a fat, ugly bitch.
Right. Like, obviously, yes.
Like, what it comes down to is I thought some guy might think you were attractive in Windover, so I proposed to you.
Yeah.
But I don't really think you're cute or nothing. Like, I don't even know how you rationalize that in your own fucking brain. So then don't jump on the bed and then be mad when I called you a pussy about it. I can't do that.
Amen.
If you complain about my cooking, I will quit cooking for 6 months. I shit you not. Like, do not say there's too many onions in this, because we'll be eating at a restaurant for 6 months and I don't give a fuck. I don't care. And so I am very quick to solve your problem. Oh, my cooking's a problem. We won't do that anymore.
I won't cook. Yeah.
Right. And so I would stick to things that were said during an argument. Like that particular day, I dumped the crock pot. So anyway, the second marriage was more verbal, was all verbal. He never laid a hand on me. And he would say, what I said when I was mad, that doesn't count because I was mad and I just said it. And I'm like, well, it doesn't change how it made me feel and so that lasted very few months, and I will say this blatantly and and probably to the horror of many people, what he did to me mentally in 18 months was worse than the physical abuse, because you can't unsay it and you can't unthink it, and so it stays in your brain. Bruises go away, and so a matter of wearing clothing to cover a bruise for a few weeks was one thing. Never does it go away that I'm not attractive, not worthy, not enough. The things that were said to me, they stay longer, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would I would every day of my life prefer to take a punch than live through that again. Which sounds crazy, I guess, on some level. And when I left the second time, it just came down to, while I was sick, he wasn't there. He didn't go to doctor's appointments. I never told him that the doctor said I only had 18 months to live. I didn't. I gleefully used his insurance. Or I thought I was using his insurance. He didn't fill out the paperwork, so I wound up paying for most of that out of my pocket, which was very expensive. But, in the end, they did a surgery that fixed the problem pretty quickly. And so I was just glad to have my life and whatever. And then we divorced, and I don't hear from him. And that's the best way. But I think a couple things are important to note. So those are just my stories. That's my stories of abuse, right? But there's some things that you should note if you're in that position. Leaving is important. An exit strategy is important, and getting as far away from possible is important. And separating your relationship and your responsibility of their relationship to your children is important, because so long it was about not ruining what he had with our children or not trying to ruin, which I let him ruin all by himself, and he eventually did. It hadn't anything to do with him in many years. And I mean, they go to family funerals and he pretends not to know his own children, so that's okay with me. I don't want anybody out there to think, I don't want to discourage anybody from leaving either, but I don't want the real world to slap anybody in the face. And so the reality is, there's not 100 people waiting to help you. You're going to have to go to work. Don't go until you're ready to go. And when you're ready to go, be ready to face anything. Anything. Get a big dog. Mine is a Mastiff St. Bernard mix. Named Boomer. And get a big dog and teach them to love you. And I don't know, I feel bad because that's why I didn't contact you guys again for a long time, because I don't want to be somebody who says, don't leave. But I also don't want people to be in the illusion that they're going to walk out the door and there's going to be an apartment ready for them and a list of jobs somebody's going to give them. And it's work. It's hard. And you have to give up things. My children had to give up things that I wasn't ready for them to give up. His financial security was a huge situation for me. And that meant my children went to work early. And there were times my children went to high school and still paid the electric bill. And that's humiliating, right? I've raised good kids who are really self-sufficient. but I wasn't sitting on my ass. I had to work 3 jobs. I didn't qualify for help from the state ever. It's not easy. You just have to love yourself more than the situation. And you have to be ready for the shit. And it, depending on where you are, like if your husband's hitting you in Wyoming, walk out, go to the police station, they'll help you there. If your husband's hitting you in Utah, I don't know what to tell you. And I I say that and I shouldn't. This is so crazy. Right after my husband and I am in a very stable, very wonderful marriage now with a man who, like, even when we're frustrated, one of us will get frustrated and raise our voice, and the other will be like, "So I'm not participating in that. So I'll be upstairs when you're done with whatever this is." And that's it. There's not a war. There's not a fight. We've both yelled. We both make the first yell, and both of us have taken the option for the next sentence to be, "I'm not going to participate in that. I love you. You're clearly upset. When you're done with this, we'll figure it out."
Yeah, I
Right?
love that.
But you have to walk away from it. And it took us 20 years to figure that out. We dated off and on for 20 years. Before we actually got married, which crazy. But just right into our marriage, we were having a discussion and we weren't really raising our voice. I was frustrated. We were in my truck. So I'm like, "So I guess I'll walk home because I'm done with this." So I got out of the truck. And then my husband got out of the truck and he's like, "You're not walking home. Just get back in the truck. I will walk home." Like, there was lots of hand motion. Someone, mystery, supposedly, who called, but someone called the cops and said he had hit me. We're on Main Street, small town, Utah, Main Street. 6 cops roll in behind the truck. And by now we're in the truck and I have it in reverse. We're leaving. 6 cops roll in. I put it in park. Get out of the car right now. So he gets out. He's like, "Is there a problem?" And they're like, Did you hit your wife?" And he's like, "No." So I rolled down my window. "We need your ID." So I give him my ID. I'm like, "What's going on?" Like, somebody called in and said, "Your husband hit you." And I said, "He didn't." And I was in a sundress, much like I'm wearing today. And I'm like, "He didn't hit me. Like, show me where."
Mhm.
And they would not take my word for it. For all the years in this town that I begged them to save me from a man that was beating me, they would not take my word for it.
When you were with someone who wasn't.
I was just mortified. Like,
Yeah. No, that's
I
hard
was
because
pretty horrified.
I, especially when you were talking about when you went to Wyoming and the police chief came out and was like, "Hey, um, if he does this, if he does this, if he does this," I like obviously everybody knows I'm a crier, so I've been like I'll cry almost every episode. But that I was I almost Heidi, I almost lost it, and I was like, "Sam, keep your shit together,"
It's a
because yeah,
that
it's
should be
so
what you get everywhere,
every
right?
time. And
Like,
it's
what?
that training of someone being like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I recognize the signs, the call and hang up." Where another, I mean, any like someone who isn't trained or doesn't know the signs can be like, "Oh my gosh, I get it. This and he's annoying that he's calling you and hanging up, but is he hurting you?" No, the calling and hanging up is to terrify you for your life. It's the walk in and sit at the edge
So
of
you
your
won't
bed.
sleep. It's the
Yes, so you won't sleep. It's the psychological torture that people don't understand. That's what leads to you killing your wife. Like,
That's how you get the chance to kill your wife.
yes.
It is you make the phone calls, you drive past the house, she calls the cops 27 times a day. And so the 28th time the cops are like, "Jesus, I don't want to go out there again." And he made it really clear, like, even if it's not his truck, I don't give a shit. He said every officer that works for me should be willing to walk up and say, "Are you this person?" And if it's not your ex-husband, apologize to the man and say, "Super sorry. Have a nice day."
Yeah. I loved the we would rather check on you 27 times than have you die. Like I just
Yeah.
I'm I got chills when you said it. I got chills again when I said it back. Like
Yeah.
that is the level that you should be experiencing every time. And it's
From
hard
every
when you have,
officer.
yes, and it's hard when you have
Mhm.
police departments, officers that don't have the funding to send somebody to training, to have the knowledge to be like, or even a leader that says, this is how my people will
Yeah,
respond.
even a leader that doesn't send you to training should have the balls to stand up in front of men and say, hey, I'd rather check on a woman 30 times a day and have her be an annoyance than find her dead, boys. Figure it out. And I think that I only have 2 states to compare it to, and I would love to, find other states or whatever. But in my mind, there is so much in Utah that is male driven and religiously driven, or religiously driven that leads to male driven. That everything has been skewed. And I think that comes from the religious pressure in this community to let a man do what you're told. And I believe that wholeheartedly, and that sounds horrible, but I believe it wholeheartedly. That's not to say that Wyoming is not full of Christians. There's a whole bunch of Christians in Wyoming who take patriarchy as, I've been put in a place in this household to protect this woman and love this woman and take care of this woman, versus I've been put in a place in this home to control this woman, turn this woman into what she needs to be, and make my life what it is for this woman. Those are two different things. And unfortunately, in the state I live in, one of those takes precedent, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I want every woman to be able to go to a police station and say, I am in danger, and have them react the way that they did in Wyoming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there isn't training. You're right. I know there isn't money for training, but how hard is it to stand before the men that work for you and go, stop being a dick?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
really does fall on your leadership of,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, your chief of police, your sheriff's department, like, because that's what people default to, the actions of their leader most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And because the system is flawed, right? So I don't know. I struggled with telling you the story because I don't have an end game for it, right? I can tell you about my child sex abuse because the end game is we probably should hang pedophiles. And I have some answers. There's a black and white answer for that, right? If someone touches you, tell. If the first person doesn't believe you, tell again. Tell a teacher because they have to tell. They have to support you. Legislation has to change. I have an end game for pedophiles. They all deserve to die. But I don't have an end game for this because getting out is different for every woman or man. My first husband tells people all of the time she was the abuser.
That's so frustrating. You're like,
Right?
where are your bruises? Because I can show you mine.
Well, he repeatedly said that I was bruised in self-defense, that he had to hold me down or hold me down, hold me back, hold me.
Yeah.
He's
He
repeatedly
Yeah,
had
told
yeah.
to
people they
choke
were all
you.
in self-defense. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
commonly choke people in self-defense. Like,
Yeah.
that's,
I commonly kick people in self-defense too. No,
yeah. When they're on the ground. Yeah.
yeah,
That's when
they're
I
already
most
on the
fear for
ground.
my
Kick them
life.
2 or 3
Yep.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in his mind, and he tells people all the time, but he believes I forced him to hit me every time I ran my mouth. Every time he was hitting or kicking, I would tell him, big strong man, aren't you? Aren't you a big strong man? Look at you controlling your wife, you piece of shit. You outweigh me by 100 fucking pounds. And I ran my mouth the whole time. Don't let that bitch raise my kids. I thought I was dying. I thought those were going to be my dying words. So I guess I'm doing this just to say you're not alone and to say it's not easy, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
And if you're in Utah, get the hell out. Cross the
Yeah.
border.
Yeah.
across the
Well,
border.
and I mean, you said that you don't have an end game for this story, but I think that that really is the end game of like, look, it is possible. It's hard, it's a lot of work, and you might not have all the help and all the resources that other people do, but it's not impossible. You can
For
get
me,
out.
it was hard, but we got there. And the reality is, no one will ever touch one of my daughters because they know how to get out.
Mm.
Um, my son will never touch a woman that way because he knows what it did and how it changed things. And you go through some really hard stuff. It's not easy to watch your son change his last name. And that sounds crazy. I am proud of what he did. But in the end, you know, his dad was real quick to say, "You've turned yourself into a bastard. You're a bastard now. You've taken her maiden name."
Oh.
Never fear, my son said, "I would be her bastard every day of the week before I claimed to be your legitimate son.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Even as her bastard, she deserves the credit. Whatever good I do and whatever bad I do, she deserves the credit."
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, that family line dies with my son's paperwork. And he's okay with that. He's okay with passing on my name. Even if people call him a bastard. So if you're in a situation where you're being abused, it's important to get out. But I'm going to lie to you. It wasn't easy. It wasn't overnight. And there were things I did doing when I did it that I regret having to do. And I feel some guilt for what I put my children through as far as they had to work and help pay bills. And I feel that guilt. But it stopped here. My girls will never feel like they did something worthy of being hit. My son will never feel like a woman did something worthy of being hit. My girls will never feel like their body shape or what they do for a living or what color their hair is or what underwear they wear or what, because that was a big, my second husband called me a whore because my underwear were too cute. Anyway, my girls will never believe anything they wore or anything they said or any way they looked or any amount of weight they gained is worthy of being told what a piece of shit they are ever.
I just love that. Like you've obviously raised like some really strong children. You've obviously raised some really empathetic children. And I think ultimately, like, our whole goal on here is to show, well, I mean, our couple, like, right, our goal is to give people a platform to talk about their story, to say, like, you're not alone. Like, I love what you said, this is the advice I can give. This is what I learned from that. And then also, like, talk about the wins. And your wins really are, like, you're in a happy family now. Like, I love that you said it ended with me. Like, it ended there. That didn't
Yeah, it
carry
ended
on.
with me. It will not. They'll never feel that way, right? And so I wanted it to stop with me. And I think some of us are born uh, nurture versus nature is a huge thing, right? But my dad died at a very young age, and I promise you, I did not get my temper from my mother. And so, I think that there is something to say about nature and how we control that need and how we control our reactions that naturally come to us. Because
Yeah.
naturally, I would like to stop my car and beat the shit out of the guy tailgating me. But I
Yeah.
don't. I just scream in my car instead. Like something has to break that.
Yeah.
Well, also, like, is there anything, like, super quick that you want to say before we get into our last question?
No, I hope I inspired somebody.
I think so.
I think you're always an inspiration every time we have you on here. I mean, the two times, but still, both times.
Look, Joe and I have been so excited. We were talking, and I was like, oh my gosh, we told Heidi we'd reach back out to her. we're like, what are we doing? So we reach back out and you're like, I'm sorry, I haven't responded in a while. We're like, first of all, we took like 3 months to reach out to you, but we're just, I, I just love every time, like both times we've talked to you, and Joe and I were even talking yesterday. We're like, we're so excited. We're talking to Heidi tomorrow. Like you just emulate this just persona of love, this persona of love, of strength, of like, I will fight for the people around me. And I'm so, it's been very interesting for me to see today the origin story of that, to lead up to everything that you went through, and you still came out such a loving, let me fight for my heart, let me fight for the hearts of those around me person. And I admire you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
agreed.
You go
Everything
one way
she
or the
said.
other. So
Well, we will end this with, if you could write a letter to yourself, what is one thing you would say?
don't fucking get married at 18 years old.
Yes. Don't fucking get married at
What
18 years
are
old.
you doing?
Snaps. Yes.
Like it just, I don't regret my kids for a minute, but I believe they were meant to be mine and they would have come to me anyway. And I just had no business getting married. I had no business being engaged at 17. I had no business dating at 14. I had no business getting married at 18 damn years old.
Yeah. Well, now you know, you're older and wiser.
Yes.
I know my kids are like all old when they get married, and people are like, "Don't you worry." I'm like, "Not for one
Not
fucking
no.
second."
If it was the other way around.
Do you have grandkids yet? Nope, I sure don't.
We are
Well, it took a long time, but I love that, and I love them, and I'm thrilled I get another one. But I am telling you, it's okay. It's okay that they were 26 and 30 when they got married, and it's okay that the other one's 25 and living in sin until she figures it out. I don't give a shit.
Yes.
Live in sin.
Live in
Live
sin.
in sin.
It's a little bit easier to
I mean,
get out
I
of that
think
kind
that
of
they'll wind up
relationship.
together, and he's a great kid, and I just love him to pieces too. But why hurry it? Why rush it?
Yeah.
Why? There's zero reason to be married at 18 years old. Zero reason.
Agreed. Love that letter. Don't get married at 18. Signed, sealed, delivered. Bam. Cool. Well, thank you, Heidi, for coming on and talking to us again. We just
Welcome.
love you.
Sorry, I'm so yucky. I love you.
No,
We love
we
you.
just,
You're the best.
yes. All right. Well, this is Project Tell Your Story signing off.
Bye.
Project Tell Your Story is created and produced by your hosts, Sam and Joe. Music composed by Morgan Mold. Logo art by Jordan Dalton. Ready to share your story? For a chance to be featured on our podcast, please reach out to us. Send a brief summary of your story to contact.tellyourstories@gmail.com.
If you or someone you know has been or is currently suffering from domestic abuse, please reach out to www.thehotline.org.